Stan Gibilisco here, proprietor and operator of amateur radio station W1, GV Whiskey 1, Good Vibrations. I was just reminiscing a little bit about the tower climbing that I did when I worked for W1AW, the ARRL headquarters station. That was back in the late 1970s, and I remember they had a 120-foot tower. They probably still have that tower. I mean, at the 60 and 120-foot levels, I believe it was 5-element 20-meter Yagis. They weren't rotatable. They were fixed, pointed in the direction of San Francisco as the great circle goes around the Earth. It was a great circle coordinates so that it was pointed towards San Francisco. And at 90-foot level, they had a 3-element, full-size 40-meter Yagi pointed in the same direction and also fixed. I'm not sure. Maybe the top Yagi on 20 meters was rotatable. I don't believe it was, but I think in any case, there were these 3 antennas, and I had to occasionally go up and check the connections at those antennas. Back then, the operators were responsible for maintaining all of the equipment, including the antenna system, except some of the mechanical things that only engineers with heavy-duty equipment could do. But climbing the tower was the responsibility at that time of the operators of the station, one of whom was me. And so I got some opportunities to see the world from the 60-foot level, the 90-foot level, and the 120-foot level. I guess 120 feet is just a little bit less than 40 meters for those of you who like to deal in the metric system. It's just a little bit under maybe 38 meters, something like that. And I got quite a view from up there, but I always had to remember, I had to wear a safety belt and clamp it on as I went up so that in case I let go, I wouldn't fall. The safety belt would keep me from falling, but I had to remember to clamp that thing. And I remember the views from up there, and sometimes I don't miss doing that particular work, by the way. It was dangerous, and people with a fear of heights, well, they wouldn't be able to do it. I obviously do not suffer from that phobia, because at the 120-foot level, it'd be quite a splat that my carcass would make when it impacted against the earth, even if there was snow on the ground. You know, I mean, really, seriously. But I remember, though not very often did I have to do that, but on one occasion, I climbed that tower when the temperature was about 0 Fahrenheit. You make the calculations for Celsius. I don't know what it was. Below 0 Celsius. With a good 25 knot wind blowing out of the northwest. So needless to say, I faced towards the southeast as I climbed up that tower. That was a good way to get frostbitten. And I believe I went to the 90-foot level to check on the 40-meter Yagi. But that brings back some memories of, and people would sometimes call the station W1AW and ask, why did you not send the specific bulletin numbers when you sent your bulletin this time? Or, you know, sometimes some really kind of inane questions, but I was the operator, and I had to answer and explain for everything that happened there, and my hours were enviable to some, not so much to others. I believe I started work at about 5 p.m. and it went until a little past midnight, 4 days a week. No, it was 3 o'clock p.m., went 4 days a week. It was a 37-and-a-half-hour work week. And most of my time was spent attending the station as to make sure that the code practice and bulletins in their various modes went out properly and on time. The head operator of the station was Chuck Bender, W1WPR, Whiskey 1, Whiskey Papa Romeo. I remember that. And he got the day shift, and so his time was spent more in giving tours of the station, and most of the station's transmissions took place in the evening hours, so I didn't have to give as many tours, which was fine with me. I didn't particularly like the touring part, but we had all kinds of equipment there. There was a big rack that stood on the floor with, of course, we ran the maximum legal limit, which at that time on CW and radio teletype was 1 kilowatt DC plate power input. On single sideband, it was 2 kilowatts peak envelope power plate power input. And yes, it was always plate power input. And we covered 160, 80, 40, 20, 15, 10, 6, and 2 meters. And on 2 meter FM, we sent audible tones for the code. I don't know if we sent radio teletype or not on 2 meters, but I just remember what a grand view it was from the top of that 120-foot tower. And sometimes I used to spend a couple of extra minutes just gazing around at the horizon and marveling at how far I could see from that height, and not thinking so much about how far I might fall if something went radically wrong. It never did. Nowadays, I think they hire a contractor to do that climbing because of the liability issues. If I fell and got killed, I reckon my family probably wouldn't be too happy about it. My family back in Rochester, Minnesota, would probably come out there and there'd be lawsuits. That isn't going to happen now that they hire contractors. I think that's what they do. You can call them up and ask them. Now, call W1AW and ask that question and see what they say. But the station equipment now is much different. There are many more new modes. They probably cover new bands because they have new antennas covering, some of the other bands. I don't know exactly what I haven't looked at their schedule and their data for a long time. But I will remember until my last day on this earth what a grand experience it was when I did get to climb that tower to the 120-foot level and look around at the horizon and think, I could almost be a bird up here. I wonder what would happen if I let that clamp go and spread my arms out and flapped my hand. No, Stanley, no. Don't think such things. Stan Gibilisco, W1GV, saying 73 and so long, which in my native fist has always, does now, and ever shall translate into da-da-da-da-da-da.